on clauses 9 and 10, which is part 2, and the various amendments.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker.
A point of order, the Honourable Annette King.
Mr. Speaker, I went to the table this morning and picked up the regulatory impact statement. And Mr. Chairman, there is no regulatory impact statement for part 2 of this bill. And I'm asking through the chair that the Minister table a regulatory impact statement on part 2 for this House, because we are being expected under urgency to debate a part of the bill in which there is no regulatory impact statement, and that is not good enough for this Parliament, where we have not got the guidance of what is to be prepared by the Ministry of Business and Innovation and Employment. And Mr. Chair, I would like you to inquire why we haven't got it, when we will get it, and whether we'll get it before this debate concludes, because we are debating blind, other than what we can glean ourselves on this part of the bill. It is not good enough when we're in urgency to expect a debate without that. And the Minister's just arrived, and maybe the Minister can tell us when Part 2's regulatory impact statement will arrive.
I just want to invite the member. Sorry, unless the Minister heard. Did you hear the point of order? Minister? Did you hear the point of order?
I only heard the last part.
I will invite because it is an important issue. I will ask
Mr. Chair, I have asked why and when the regulatory impact statement will arrive on the table of the House for the opposition on part 2 of this bill, which we are about to debate. It is not acceptable that we've been asked to debate a bill where the government has got information and it's being withheld from the opposition because we rely on regulatory impact statements. Minister, when will it arrive? And Mr. Chair, I wonder whether this debate can be held up until we receive it, because that is what you would do in a proper democratic debate. You would provide the opposition with all the information they need, and I'd ask you, Mr. Chair, whether that is possible, that we wait until it is tabled in this House.
Speaking to the point of order.
the Honourable Nick Smith, or the other way around, Honourable Dr. Nick Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A long-standing practice, and that is where provisions, and occurred under previous governments as well, are deemed to have no impact on public policy, that they are minor legislative changes.
Order. No, please, this is an important point, and the very member who was interjecting was the one who asked me to rule on it, and there is a precedent here which is quite important, and I want to listen to the Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Treasury is responsible for developing impact regulatory statements. The Treasury, as is noted in the Cabinet papers that have been publicly released, said that there was no public policy implications of the part 2 of this bill. It was simply clarifying the way in which all public agencies have administered this law in the past, and consistent with many other provisions of law, and I could give numerous examples, no regulatory impact statement was required as a consequence. So there is not one, and that is because this simply clarifies what is the existing law.
The Honourable Annette King.
If that is the case, Mr. Chairman, why was it not written in a regulatory impact statement saying it's not required because it has no public policy impact? That would have at least given some indication. But for there to be a blank in this, and us to rely on the Minister saying that's what he was told, we haven't received that advice. We haven't got it written anywhere. So, Minister,
okay, I think I might have a solution. The Minister did refer to a Treasury report indicating that he said has been made public, that indicates that this is the case, that he's assured the House that there's a Treasury document which is available, which indicates that it doesn't have public policy impact. And I think the simplest thing would be if the Minister asked his officials to get a copy of that and get it onto the table of the House as quickly as possible. And that would save me having to make what might be a more difficult ruling. Well, can I just... Can I just check? If it is
Chairman.
publicly available, then I think the Minister can point us to where it is publicly available.
Mr Chairman, with any bill that comes through the parliamentary process, the Treasury make an assessment with their regulatory impact team, and just on every clause of every bill, you will not find a Treasury report on every provision. What the Treasury has advised is that they deemed there was no regulatory impact of these provisions, and so they were not included in the regulatory impact statement on this bill.
Okay, so can I just, I do want to check with the Minister, was that advice received in writing? Well, no, I'm sorry, if the member has it, that's fine.
Sure. Why don't I do this, Mr Speaker? I've actually got a second point of order. Why don't I do this? I seek leave of the House to table the Cabinet Committee paper Housing Legislation Amendment Bill 2016. I'm looking for a date, which it doesn't seem to have on it, but it's been released, it says the 6th of September, I think, but that can't really be right, from the Office of the Minister in Building and Housing to the Cabinet Economic Growth Infrastructure Committee. And I can clarify, it includes in paragraph 88 that a regulatory impact analysis requirements do not apply to some of the proposals in this paper, and a regulatory impact statement has not been prepared for these proposals. These proposals have no or only minor impacts on businesses, individuals or not-for-profit entities.
Now, is there any objection to that document being tabled? There appears to be none. It can be tabled. Point of order, Grant Robertson.
Mr Speaker, I have an additional point of order which relates to this, which is the content of the departmental disclosure statement that is on the table. This is the only document on the table for us that gives any information about Part 2 from a departmental point of view. And I want to raise through you, Mr Chair, my concern with that document. Because in that document, there in Part 2 of the, Part 4 of that document, as for all bills, a significant legislative features section is required. And in that section, in 4.1, the question is asked, does this bill contain any provisions that could result in the compulsory acquisition of private property? It then also goes on to ask whether or not the bill creates or amends a decision-making power to make a determination about a person's rights, obligations or interests. Both of those questions are answered as no in the departmental disclosure statement. Mr. Chair, I would venture to suggest that that is plainly untrue. That actually, particularly in the last one that I said about the creating or amending of a decision-making power to make a determination about a person's rights, obligations or interests protected or recognised by law. It is quite clear that that is what Part 2 does, and I believe that we have a departmental disclosure statement that is in fact false on the table of the House. And in the absence of a regulatory impact statement, I believe we have a major difficulty in proceeding with this bill.
Yep. Okay. Dealing with the second point of order, it's an area that I'm not unfamiliar with, and on which, well, I'll take full responsibility for my ruling. It is one which I have consulted on because of, I think it's fair to say, similar concerns about the departmental statement. The departmental statement is not an official document. It has not been formally tabled, and therefore some of the normal responsibilities with regard to privilege and responsibilities of ministers do not apply to it. So therefore, the matter which the member raises is a matter for debate, and I expect some intense debate, but it is not a matter of privilege and not the responsibility of the chair to sort out. We now move to debate on Part 2. Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Chairman.